Number one, would you say hello to Cheryl, please?
We're going to have a great time together, Cheryl.
Hi, I'm Carol, and I have an interest in true crime and a passion for miniatures. I've decided to combine the two so we can explore various cases from a slightly different angle. One of these receipts was the key evidence to putting the dating game killer behind bars for good. Could you guess which one it is? Who was the dating game killer? Rodney Alcala, also known as the dating game killer, made his infamous appearance on the dating game show in September of 1978. Leading up to this, Alcala had already violently assaulted a child and murdered 5 victims between 2 coasts. Despite having had some run-ins with the law and being on parole, he was not yet linked to the murders he'd committed and would not be known as the dating game killer until much later. He had even been on the FBI's most wanted list while living on the East Coast, where he went by the name John Berger. This, of course, was likely in an attempt to outrun the law for crimes against his first known victim, 8-year-old Tali Shapiro, back in Los Angeles in 1968. Fast forward to 1978. With his criminal history piling up, Alcala was hiding in plain sight as the public tuned in to watch, unbeknownst to them, a serial killer in action. The show consisted of 3 contestants and a bachelorette. Whoever seemed the most appealing to the bachelorette would ultimately win a date with them. On that particular episode, Alcala was among 2 other contestants looking to win a date with Cheryl Bradshaw. Which contestant was Alcala? Was he bachelor number 1, bachelor number 2, or bachelor number 3?
Bachelor number 1.
Yes?
What's your best time?
The best time is at nighttime.
Why do you say that?
Because that's the only time there is.
The only time? What's wrong with morning, afternoon?
Well, they're okay, but nighttime's when it really gets good.
In the moment, it might have seemed like provocative TV, but in hindsight, those words were hair-raising, bone-chilling, and straight-up horrifying. What's more, little did Bradshaw realize she had been charmed by a serial killer to pick him as the lucky winner. After chatting with the bachelor she chose, Bradshaw felt that something wasn't quite right about Alcala. He pretty much gave her super weird vibes, like creepster vibes, stating, "He is showing a psychopathic personality in the green room. He wasn't acting at that time. Those were his enemies, and he had to beat them to get the girl, and he wanted to win." Fortunately for Cheryl Bradshaw, she was allowed to back out of their date. But what Bradshaw couldn't have known then was that she'd narrowly escaped a date with the man who would later be charged with the murders of 7 people, although authorities believe his victim count is far beyond that. Jed Mills, who appeared as bachelor number 2 in the same episode, recalled his experience with Alcala as, "He was very obnoxious and creepy. He became very unlikable and rude and imposing as though he was trying to intimidate. I wound up not only not liking this guy, not wanting to be near him, he got creepier and more negative." As mentioned earlier, Alcala had a number of run-ins with the law after he had already begun his extremely cruel and violent spree. This killer had been behind bars on numerous occasions for molestation and breaking parole via drug possession, his only known crimes at the time. He was released time after time only to continue covertly killing under the police's radar. In 1968, after attacking 8-year-old Shapiro in Los Angeles, Alcala fled the scene of the crime as officers moved in. Officer Camacho found Shapiro nearly lifeless and made the quick decision to save her life rather than chase down Alcala. Officer Hodel, who worked on the Shapiro case, convinced the FBI to put Alcala on their most wanted list. At this point, Alcala was living on the East Coast and was enrolled in New York University School of the Arts under the name John Berger. During this time, a woman named Cornelia Crilly was found dead in her Manhattan apartment in June of 1971. She had been strangled with nylon stockings, bitten, raped, and ultimately murdered. Under the false identity of John Berger, Alcala was working at a summer camp in New Hampshire when he was recognized from the FBI's Most Wanted poster and was turned in by his fellow camp counselors. He was arrested and extradited back to Los Angeles in 1971. Alcala was personally escorted by Officer Hodel. the man who put him on the FBI's most wanted list. The Shapiro family wanted to spare their daughter from having to relive the horrors of that fateful day, and without the primary witness on the stand, prosecutors were not able to convict Alcala of kidnapping, rape, and attempted murder. He was instead convicted of child molestation in the Shapiro case and served just under 3 years in prison before being released on parole. Soon after Alcala was released, he was back behind bars for violating his parole when he offered a 13-year-old marijuana and allegedly kidnapped her in 1974. After serving 2.5 years in prison for this incident, Alcala was back on the streets, once again on parole. Despite being a repeat offender, he was granted permission to leave the state to vacation in New York. There, his victim count continued to climb. Alcala was linked to a missing persons case when the name John Berger was found written on the calendar of Ellen Hover, whose body would be discovered a year later. Admitting that he and Hover did meet up, Alcala claimed that it was only to take pictures, after which he dropped her off and denied any wrongdoing. At the time that he was questioned on Hover's then disappearance, there was no evidence, witnesses, or body. Authorities were forced to release Alcala without pressing any charges. You may be wondering how he lured his victims. Alcala was a trained photographer and often carried his camera around, asking people if he could photograph them for his portfolio. He would stop people and ask if he could take their picture, and while some were willing, others were not. This was his hunting tactic, and once he was able to gain the trust of his subjects, some were never seen or heard from again. So, how did a receipt ultimately tie everything together? Well, an additional series of unfortunate events would unfold before authorities were eventually led to it. After his appearance on the dating game, Alcala was back on the prowl again. June 20th, 1979. As Alcala moved along Huntington Beach, searching for his next victim, he came across 2 young girls, Robin Samso and Bridget Wilvert. He approached the girls and asked to take their picture, which they declined. Alcala was eventually scared off by another adult who witnessed the interaction and intervened. At some point, the pair returned to Wilvert's house, where Samso asked to borrow a bike to get to a ballet class she was running late for. Wilvert loaned Samso the bike, cautioning, "And don't stop." Sadly, Samso would never turn up to the ballet studio where she was expected. Not long after the friends parted, she was reported missing. Wilvert worked with a sketch artist to create a detailed composite of the man who approached them on the beach. The sketch was critical in leading to Alcala's arrest, but there are 2 competing theories as to how. In one account, it said that a detective who'd seen the composite sketch saw a rerun of Alcala's episode of the dating game and pieced it together. The other account is that Alcala's parole officer recognized him from the sketch, alerted authorities, and informed them of Alcala's history. Whichever story is accurate, and perhaps they both are, it boils down to the fact that Rodney Alcala was recognized and caught for the final time. Alcala was arrested at his mother's home in Monterey Park, where he was living at the time, on July 24, 1979, for the murder of 12-year-old Robin Samso. Authorities obtained a search warrant for Alcala's home, and as they examined the space, a storage locker receipt stood out to one of the officers. The warrant, however, did not allow for authorities to collect paperwork, but since it was in plain sight, the officer decided to write down the information from the receipt to further investigate it. While jailed, one of Alcala's sisters visited him, where he reportedly said, "It's a good thing they don't know about the storage locker." This was heard over police surveillance. From this vital piece of evidence, investigators located the locker in Seattle, Washington, and paid it a visit. What was being stored here that undoubtedly tied Rodney Alcala to his brutal crimes? When authorities entered the locker, they discovered thousands of photographs of women, girls, and boys of varying ages and backgrounds, many of which were sexually explicit photos. They also found earrings belonging to his victims, and among them was a pair Robin Samso's mother identified as her daughters. The investigators collected the items in the locker, and in 2010, they made the photographs taken by Alcala available to the public. They hoped to identify the people in the pictures to see if there were possibly any other potential victims in those photos. Not everyone was accounted for, but 21 women came forward. Some called to say they were alive and fine, while others identified friends and relatives who had been reported missing long ago. One of the women who came forward was Kathy Thornton. She received a picture of her missing sister, Chris Thornton, from the photos made available online, which was taken sometime back in the 70s. Christine Thornton was reported missing in 1977. Her body was found in Wyoming in 1982, but had remained unidentified. Not only was Kathy able to identify her sister, but she also provided DNA, which contributed to a positive identification of Christine Thornton in 2015. Christine Thornton was 6 months pregnant at the time of her murder. Based on the number of photographs found in Alcala's storage locker, it's widely believed that his total victim count is much higher. Ultimately, Alcala was tried 3 times for the murder of Robin Samso before a final sentencing actually stuck. And potentially being a court-diagnosed narcissist, Alcala even opted to defend himself during the 3rd trial, where, needless to say, he was unsuccessful. With the evidence gathered throughout the years, Alcala was ultimately convicted for murdering 7 people and was sentenced to death with an additional 25 years to life sentence for 2 cold murder cases in New York that he was later convicted of committing. In 2016, Alcala was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Chris Thornton. Like with Hover, he admitted to taking Thornton's photo, but denied killing her and did not enter a plea. Due to his ailing health, he was never extradited to Wyoming to stand trial for her murder. Rodney Alcala died of natural causes at the age of 77 on July 24, 2021, while on California's death row. What other cases should we take a look at through miniatures?